Hello, Get Better Faster Nation. I'm Dr. Jason Bradley, and along with my co-host, the one, the only James Chester, and our incredible executive producer, Dr. Rachel Bradley, we want to welcome you to another exciting episode of the Get Better Faster podcast. Today, we're joined by a guest whose work is about to flip the script on everything you thought you knew about trauma, chronic illness, and why your body just won't let you heal. Dr. Aimie Apigian is a double board certified physician in preventive and addiction medicine with master's degrees in biochemistry and public health. She's a certified functional medicine physician, the founder of the Mind Body Biology Institute, and the national best-selling author of The Biology of Trauma, with a foreword by none other than the legendary Gabor Mate. Her book hit bestseller status for good reason. She's teaching the world that your body is not broken, it's adapted. And understanding your adaptations is the key to freedom. She's here to break down why trauma is not just psychological, it's biological. Why stored stress is driving your autoimmunity, your fatigue, your anxiety, your chronic pain, and your shutdown. And most importantly, what you can actually do about it. Without further ado, Dr. Aimie, my good friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It is really good to be here, Dr. Jason.
Well, I got a good chance to get a snapshot about what kind of work you're doing. And like Dr. Jason said, best-selling book, forward by Gabor Mate. And I think that there's just a huge level of connection there. And I know you're doing a lot of work to help people, but what you came up with didn't happen in a therapist's office. I think, you know, it goes back to a deeper root than that. And it really hits home with you because I know, because I read a lot about your background, that you adopted a young boy named Miguel. Can you take us back to that origin story about how you brought Miguel into this world of yours and how that sparked this journey forward for you?
I did not know what was in store for me when I signed up to be a foster parent. And looking back, I'm so glad I did, because it really took me on a path that was excruciatingly hard at the time and was exactly what I needed to find myself, my true path, and what would be what I needed for my own health years later. So I had just finished my master's in biochemistry, and I decided to become a foster parent in the months waiting to jump back into third year of medical school. This was at Loma Linda University, Southern California.
Nice.
And I go through all of the paperwork, and I mean all of the paperwork. It is a lot to sign up to be a foster parent. So I say that just in the context of, by the time I actually was cleared for children, I was already back in third year of medical school and internal medicine rotation. So if anyone here has been through medical school, they will know that that is one of the more intense rotations, very busy, very full. And I get a call from the social worker, Rosa, and she said, "We have a little boy. He needs a home." That was pretty much all I needed at that time to say, yes. I don't care about the how, just yes. And the result of that was me being able to see the impact of early life on a child, that you can change their environment, but something has happened inside of them that they are not able to understand, that this is a new environment and that they're safe now and that they're loved now and that they're taken care of and that things are different. He was living as if he were still back with his biological mom and truly needing to figure out a way to survive. And that was my first wake-up call to realize these behaviors that come out of our survival place, trauma place, if you want to call it that, they're not a conscious decision that we make. And it's not going to be just a conscious decision to say, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. Like me, right? Oh, I'm not going to emotionally eat anymore. Oh, I'm not going to, push people away to protect my heart and never, be seen for who I really am ever again. Like, those things are just not conscious decisions. And yet I had truly seen them as something that is purely logical, purely psychological. I just changed my mindset. I put some willpower behind it. And to see him struggle, to see him do things that he did not want to be doing, but this survival biology seemed to take over. It was the lesson that I needed to really have that shift in perspective that would change the rest of my life as well.
Well, I want to go back into a little deeper channel on what you said there, and it's about environment, right? And I think that people have to understand that environment has a lot to do with our relationship with ourselves, but it also has a lot to do with how we see the world around us. And that's a huge part of understanding the trauma cycle. I think a lot, it's a very sparky word this day and age, trauma. And, people talk about trauma bonds and things like this. And I think that when you think on a different level is the regular system that most people plug into, the medical insurance system, the big pharma system, they say, okay, well, this person has a psychological problem. We're just going to dope them up. Or we're going to throw a prescription at him or her or the child. And then that takes more damage control, I would think, to undo and to pull somebody out of that pit than where they started with at the first place. And I talk about this a lot on our show. Like if we just went back to like the original moment and didn't misconstrue it or misdiagnose or miseffort where we were with that individual and we just went the right pathway with them, we wouldn't have to go back and like undo all these other things that the regular mainstream said, hey, this is going to be the solution for this case. So how have you been able to like figure out that we don't need to go this other route? We can actually get solutions more organically and more based on the unwinding of the trauma rather than putting another layer that we have to basically go back and fix later.
You're really speaking to one of the most common misconceptions of trauma healing. And when I realized that, I need some trauma work, I did what I had told all of my patients to do. Go see a therapist about that. Go talk about that. You should really talk to someone about that. And this was my kind of first dose into that world, and realizing by that time I already had autoimmunity and chronic fatigue syndrome, and realizing that when I would go in and what I thought was a great session, meaning I cried a lot, we really went into the story and we stirred things up, I would spend the rest of the day on my couch in a fetal position because I was so wiped out and so exhausted. It would re-trigger my physical health symptoms of the fatigue and autoimmunity. And from that point, I was able to start asking questions, just being curious, and landed on this idea of it is less about what happened to me in the past and more about what's still happening inside of me right now. And if I'm going into a therapist or I'm talking to my girlfriend on the phone and complaining about whatever has happened, whatever it is, if I am going back into the past, I'm only reliving that experience without the resolution, which just repeats that emotional experience. So rather than resolving anything, I'm actually reinforcing that. Instead, what I can do is I can look at what's going on inside of me right now. How can I create a different response right now in this present moment? Forget the past. I can't change the past, but I can change my response in the present moment to whatever it is that I'm experiencing, whether that be this conversation with you, or I'm angry, or I'm upset with you, or there's some kind of conflict. How am I managing that conflict? Maybe I've just experienced a loss or a grief. How am I navigating that differently right now so that I can change my default responses that have been programmed from my past experiences?
Wow. Sorry, James, go ahead.
It takes me back to Miguel.
Exactly.
And if you can catch the recognition of pattern,
yes,
from a place of safety, and you can catch it from a place of no agenda other than this is my reality. I think that when you see like the authentic realness of what you experience with him, it gives you a start stop point different when you recognize that with other people, which I think is huge because we have to take the individual very serious at the moment, but people live in patterns. So if you can learn to break the pattern fast, you can get recovery quicker. And I think that that has a lot to do with the work that you do, is if you can get to the idea of recognizing where the pattern is now, then we don't go into these open loop system within ourselves. We learn to complete the cycle quick, and then we move on with life, rather than having these old systems run in the background constantly that never get resolved. And that's really why you went into this segment of, gosh, I'm autoimmune things are kicking back up, my trauma is kicking back up, is because you can talk to people all day long, but if you don't figure out how to move from that response to the resolution, we're always going to be in the open loop.
That's it. It's the open loop.
I think you're totally right, and I appreciate that perspective. And I have so many notes I've already taken, and we're just minutes into the show, so this is going to be great. It's interesting because, in my own medical training, I think in most everyone that's in medical practice or some type of provider, we get the same type of training, which is this. I'll just boil it down. Catharsis is the answer, right? I mean, you talk to somebody, and you kind of, gush out. I was going to say vomit, but you gush out and share it, like you said, either with your psychologist or counselor or psychiatrist or girlfriend or whoever it happens to be. And then it's supposed to be better. Like, we got it out. And it's an old theory, but it's really the prevalent mechanism that we're all taught, share it, get it out. And I do think it's better than holding it in. But I think that introducing that whole open loop system of, okay, maybe we're re-experiencing it, but now what are we going to do? What's the next piece of that step? So I have just a question. And I have so many questions, but I'm not even sure how to say this, but does talking to a therapist still help? I mean, or are we past that? And can we bypass that and jump right into taking action? I'm curious.
Am I going to say that it's not helpful to talk to a therapist? No, I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to, right? Like what we do is we present a new model that makes the old model be incomplete.
Obsolete.
So the new model is for that level of change to happen where it actually changes our felt sense of what is safe and what is dangerous. To change our sensory system that has said this smell, this taste, this feeling means life threat. That happens at a much deeper level than cognition, even awareness. And so from this model, then talking is one layer, but you've got 2 layers more that need to be also reprogrammed in order to have that reach the level of your survival neural system and actually change your default responses. And I emphasize default because you can still try to make a conscious decision about how to respond in a situation once you're aware of what the situation is and what your normal response would be. But there is so much that we do that is unconscious. We just do it because we feel like it, and we don't stop to even analyze it, because maybe I'm working through the day and I'm just grabbing some candy or food out of the cupboard. I'm not stopping to think about, why am I grabbing this right now? And why am I grabbing this food and not the carrots and the celery that's in the refrigerator? Like, there's just so much that we do that's on the subconscious level. If we really want to reach that level, talking is only one part of a much larger puzzle. And so as a physician, this is what grabbed me. Was a patient came in. It's actually the patient that I talked about in chapter 1, Elena, car accident, autoimmunity. So she's sitting in front of me, and she does not realize that her autoimmunity is also related to her past life experiences. She doesn't realize that it is related to her childhood. She doesn't realize this connection. And then even once she does, she's not realizing that this is a sign that that trauma is still unresolved. And so here's what I found is, as I talked with more patients, they would tell me, oh, Dr. Aimie, I've talked to a therapist about that. I've resolved that. I've moved on from my childhood. That's no longer affecting me. And I'm looking at their profile, and I'm looking at their labs, and I'm looking at their diagnoses, and I'm like, and you don't think your childhood is still affecting you? I got news for you. It's all over your biology. This is a biology of trauma. You have resolved it perhaps on that layer, but not on this biology layer.
I think that's so important too. I don't remember exactly when this was, but I would say roughly 20 to 25 years ago. I was following Dr. Jeff Bland around the country when he was doing his functional medicine lectures and kind of laying down the foundation for what we all do. Probably about 25 years ago, I guess. I don't like to say that because it makes me feel old. But
makes him feel old.
Right. And I remember being at this conference or at this talk, and he said something that was amazingly controversial, evidently at the time. And he said very casually, and I don't know how he got to this point, but somebody had asked something or said something, and it was in the conversation. He said, the more I think about it, that if a doctor is not addressing stress, is what he called it, in every single visit, it might be malpractice. And I have never seen a response like I did. It was like in a movie, like, you're out of order. And no, there were doctors standing up and slamming their fists on the tables saying, that's not science. We're real doctors. We deal with the body. The brain is not our, it's not our wheelhouse. That's the psychologists and the counselors. And don't tell me what malpractice is. It hit a really sharp nerve. I mean, it really did. And then it's interesting because I don't know when it was, a few years ago, the American Academy of Family Practice in their own journal said something to the effect of, hey, did you know about 90% of what you guys are seeing is related to stress, and you should probably be checking it out? And I'm thinking, boy, it only took a little over 2 decades to catch up with what Bland was hypothesizing, way back when. So I think it's an important thing for us to understand that stress does have a biological impact. And I know that as an autoimmune doctor, I see it all the time when people have stressful events. And I always like to remind our listeners that stress is interesting. Stress can be, any of the 3 T's: traumas, toxins, or thoughts, right? I mean, they can all show up biologically. But I know that people think like, oh, I had a trauma. That makes sense. My body's injured. I have a toxin in my body that could hurt my body. But the thoughts is the 3rd T. And it has the same biological triggering that the other ones do. And I see my autoimmune patients just getting all kinds of wonked out with flares when they have a stressful event in their life, and they're so confused by it, and the longer I do the work that I do, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but the longer I do the work that I do, and especially with Dr. Rachel, who definitely is much more the expert in this than I am, the more I think it is about nervous system regulation and learning what to do to help regulate, or maybe a better word is, I don't know if I'm using the right word here, but readapt our nervous system. Because I really do see that it's not just childhood trauma, but there's a lot of childhood trauma that a lot of people are experiencing and still continue to experience, but ongoing patterns that we have learned to adapt to survive the childhood traumas that might have served us somehow to get through it, but they're not really serving us now, but we just keep doing it. And I literally 26 years into practice now, I feel like that's where the magic is. That's the magic sauce. And I'm so happy that you wrote this book, because it's the trauma biology. The biology of trauma. See, my dyslexia kicked in there. The biology of trauma, because it really is a roadmap for people to understand those adaptations and what to do. But before I get there, Dr. Aimie, am I kind of hitting it right? Am I saying all those words the right way?
That's what I see. But again, when I talk about environment, when you talk about environment, I would think that most people, Dr. Jason, are going to think of their external environment. And they're going to say, but I've moved out of the house. I've cut off my family. I don't even see my family anymore. They're only seeing their external environment and not realizing that at this point, now that we're an adult, our biology, our nervous system has already adapted to the previous environment. And it's created its own internal environment. That's its now source of truth.
Yeah.
The internal environment is our source of truth. And so that's why we have to go to what we call the neuroception level in order to change this level of unconscious patterns, is because at that unconscious level is the internal environment of, do I generally feel safe? Or do I generally see potential danger everywhere? That's not an external environment. You can be in the best environment, the best relationship, the best everything, but what's your internal thermometer set to?
I fully see that. And I want to pass over to James because I know he's chomping at the bit, but it reminded me of John Kabat-Zinn's book, Wherever You Go, There You Are. You know, and I mean, we do carry ourselves, and this programming, I think that you mentioned, you know, when you were kind of telling your origin story, that programming follows us around no matter where we go. And unless we work, I don't know if work on our programming is even the right word, but you know, identify and take action, which we're going to get to here in a minute on that neuroception level. We're just going to be the same person. We can keep moving, but it's going to keep following us around. You know, James, go ahead, sir.
Well, I love that you guys have established such a baseline for the problem. You know, one of the things I always tell people is the issues are in the tissues. And sometimes the tissues are motor neurons, and the way that we think and the way that we behave and the reality that paints a picture for us. But I wanted to go a little bit deeper. You talk about it's okay to talk, and it's sometimes cathartic to do so. But Dr. Jason said, but hey, you got to take action now. And I can agree with that too. But what action do we take? And what if the person doesn't understand the new path? How do you get people to understand what their new reality must become once we come to the conclusion point that we can have a conversation, and now we've identified that we need to take action? But you're talking about it, Dr. Aimie, that people have resistance to that because they don't want to admit to it. They don't want to say that it's a real problem inside of me. It's just a problem that is based on where I lived before, or it's a problem based on my family, or it's a problem based on my past relationship, my romantic relationship, or whatever it might be. How do you get people to embody this new reality and to like accept the fact that their problem isn't what they're basically saying? Because I know, because I've interviewed, like Dr. Jason said, over 1,400 people. There's things that people will say, there's things that people won't say, and there's things that people will never say. How do you get people to actually uncork the never and to move past their biology of trauma?
All right, here's a question for you, James. If you were that person, I know you're not, but if you were that person who says, let's just call it blame, right? Like you're putting all the blame on, no, it's this person in my life who's the real problem. They just need to change, and then I would be fine, and then I would be happy, and then I would be healthy. If you were that person and I came along and said, they're not the problem at all, what am I inferring?
That I'm the problem.
Inferring that you are the problem. To what human being is that ever going to feel safe to say, oh my goodness, I'm the problem? Thank you so much for showing me that. I am so grateful. How can I pay you more money to show me that I am the problem? If I am the problem, James, it actually confirms my biggest fear, that I am the problem, that there's something wrong with me, that there's something defective about me, that I'm not enough, or that I'm too much. Or here we go through all of the beliefs that I can hold about myself that you have just confirmed my biggest fear in life. So instead, here's where we actually bring in, what does it mean when the leaders in the space say it all starts with safety? I mean, it sounds nice. It's a great phrase, but what the hell do we do with that? What does that actually mean? Somehow I have to make it safe for you to be able to get curious about the fact that actually, maybe it's not about them at all. Maybe this is about me. But until we've created it to be safe to even consider that, it is perceived and experienced as a life threat to admit that I think I'm the problem. So it really does all start with safety. And I'm going to then say it has to come down to a person learning how to create the feeling of being safe in their body, in the present moment. That's where healing starts.
Wow.
Well, I know Jason has some notes that he wants to go over with you, but I'm just going to make a bold statement.
Oh, I love it.
When I was a little boy, you know how I learned how to swim?
Being thrown into the pool.
Yeah, it wasn't safety. My brother threw me in the deep end of the pool. You know how I learned how to ride a bike? He put me on the bike and I didn't know how to use the brakes, and I went and hit a parked car and I flipped over the handlebars. I think that the whole idea of safety sometimes is a trap. I think that sometimes you have to give people the hard truth. You have to say, hey, you kind of suck at life and you don't have a lot figured out. And I'm here to tell you that you can continue to tell yourself this narrative, or you can do what I recommend for you and you'll go a lot faster and get a lot better results. I think that I'm not trying to be the expert here, because I'm not, but I'm just sharing like a narrative of how I've learned from the School of Hard Knocks and how I grew up on the streets. And if I got beat up, I'd get beat up twice. So I think that we have to come into the world where safety does matter, of course. But if we lean too deep into that edge of reality, then results might not happen. So I think that we have to constantly challenge what the person in front of us needs. And this gets me to the bigger question. Do you think that you can teach this type of work to just anybody and they can get the same results? Or do you think it has to do with the relationship that that person has with that practitioner?
That's a great question. So, what I do know is that, I'm thinking back to my years of being an addiction medicine physician. And what we talk about in addiction medicine is still a lot of we have to wait for them to hit rock bottom. We have to wait for their pain of their experience to become so painful that it's less painful to change than to stay where they're at. And we can look at, is that kind of the School of Hard Knocks, how we actually build resiliency? Is that how we build resiliency? Are we raising a generation of younger people who have no resilience because they're all being invited to just, don't do it until it feels safe to do?
Yes, we create this idea of this illusion of safety for them where they never put on a pair of boxing gloves and go fight.
Right. So
I'm doing that later tonight. I'm excited about it, by the way. But anyway.
So I think this is really coming down to then, what is our definition? What is our definition of safe? What is our definition of resilience? What is our definition of trauma? Because if I stay small to stay safe, how is that resilience? How is that healing? I would not consider that healing at all. I would consider that, you've become aware of what we might call your triggers. And rather than actually working on your triggers to have a different response, you're just going to avoid your triggers to keep staying safe. And thus the result is, to your point, James, we are going to create a whole generation of people who just stay small in order to stay safe. And that is not what we are designed as humans.
I know.
When we look at our physiology, we are designed to open up and expand into our agency, if you want to call it our power. I don't care what word you use. I'm actually thinking of a very specific physiological state where we are in this upregulation of energy, and we can accomplish and create and co-create so many amazing things because we are in this higher level of energy and focus and flow. That, to me, looks very different than someone who's just staying small to stay safe. So to your point then, staying small to stay safe is not the idea. It's not the idea for you to be able to always sit at the edge of the pool, and eventually you're going to be in your 70s still sitting at the edge of the pool being like, I wish I could get into the pool. I wish I could swim. At some point, you're going to have to get into the water and swim. But then we get to the how, right? This is a big part of what I teach and I share in my book in section 3 of, it's not just, okay, here's the healing journey. It's how do we do the healing journey now that we understand how to become partners with our body, rather than force our body off this ledge and being like, good luck. Don't forget that you've got the parachute. It's a very different approach when we decide, I am not going to abandon you. I am not going to overwhelm you. I am going to be in this with you. And we're going to figure this out together. We're going to be partners in this. And that was a big shift for me because I had never known how to be a partner to my body. I'd always seen it as this thing below my neck that just needed to perform for me every day. And if that's how we're approaching our body will consistently give up and give out on us. You can call it burnout, you can call it shutdown, you can call it whatever you want to call it, but the idea that our mind can have one idea of what we want to do, what we want to accomplish, how we want to respond, and then our body seems to have a mind of its own. And that's what we're talking about here, because when we exceed, when we put so many demands on our body or our nervous system, then what it actually has the capacity to do, we put it into a trauma state. That's not the growth state. So in my book, I say the stress physiology is your growth state. That is where you are going to grow. That is where you're going to grow resilience. And so that's where we want to be. We want to be in stress and then have our time of rest. Stress and rest is what equals growth and resilience, not stress. Oh my God, I'm going to die overwhelmed. Stress, overwhelmed. That is not what leads to resilience.
There's so much there that I relate to. And, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's interesting that you talked about, good luck with the parachute. Hope that works. Because one of the analogies that, I always use is, it's like walking up to the edge of a cliff. I say this all the time. It's like walking up to the edge of a cliff and you're jumping off by yourself, or you could do like a base jump with someone that's done it 500,000 times and, strap yourself into them and they know how to work the parachute and they know how to control it going down. And you have your, you might be okay if you do it yourself, but probably you're going to be hitting the side of that cliff and hitting the ground pretty hard and it's going to hurt a whole lot. And you're probably never going to want to do it again. So I totally feel that. And I think the hardest thing that I find is trying to route people to those people that are willing to jump off the cliff with them and partner with them. I think it's hard to find that because, again, coming back to conventional training is very much, especially with counseling, is tell me about, what you think is going on. And then how do you feel about that? What do you think you need to do? And I mean, I can't imagine like trying to learn to like hang glide or paraglide or jump off a cliff with like somebody asking me like, how do you think you should do it? I don't know. Put on the parachute, jump and pull the trigger. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. And I feel like there's a missing component there of conventional training and what we're talking about with working with someone that's trauma informed, and not just trauma informed and gets it, but someone that's trauma informed that understands how to help you with what I'm going to call, and please correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I'm out of my wheelhouse. Where's Dr. Rachel when I need her? but I wrote down in my notes, it seems kind of like, if we stay small to stay safe, how does that help with resilience? Is it healing? And I wrote, is this Gestalt therapy slowly training the nervous system, and doing these tiny little like exposure therapies where it's like, look, I did that and I'm still safe. Now rest and let my body recognize that I'm safe. Now I'll do a little bit more. And then I'll step back and am I thinking in the right way, so to speak, or am I simplifying it too much?
I don't think you're simplifying it. I think you're clarifying it. This is
the first for everything, everybody. So
I think these are the principles of the human body. These are principles of nature. Stress and rest is what grows your muscles.
Yeah.
Stress and rest is what builds your capacity. And what we've tried to do as humans is we've said, well, stress and more stress must give me more results.
Right.
We've compromised on the rest, not realizing that no, if you talk to an Olympic athlete, they will tell you the most important thing that they do for their performance is not the workout, it's the recovery. They can optimize their recovery. Their performance is much better. That's the lever to pull. And here we are as humans thinking, no, somehow I'm different. And I am going to just stay in stress and go right up to that line of the cliff. I won't fall over the cliff, but I'm going to go right up to the edge. I'm going to try to push the envelope on what I can do. And then we get surprised when we get sick, when we burn out, when we experience anxiety, when we can't sleep at night. Why? What's wrong with me? I'm working so hard. I think that's part of the problem, right? Like your stress and not the rest part of the equation.
James, I know you have some things to say here, but it's interesting because I think about myself and, I'm a survivor of many adverse childhood experiences. I had a wacky childhood. We don't need to psychoanalyze me today unless we want to, but, for a long time, I had to push through. I had to survive. And that led me to substance abuse, at an early age in my teens. That followed me because wherever you go, there you are, right? It followed me to college. I almost failed out. I think I'm smart enough, I do pretty well, but I almost failed out of my undergraduate. I think my first semester in college, I haven't shared this publicly. My GPA was 0.67. You have to work at that. That's almost impressive. And the counselors brought me in and they were like, you don't have to go to college. There's like other things you can do. You're spending a lot of money to be here. And, by the time I graduated my undergraduate, I was on the dean's list and president's list and all that kind of crap. And then I got my, first doctorate, my second doctorate and did well through those things. But once I figured that out, I was doing better in school, but the addiction continued to follow me, all through, even though I figured out how to be functional with my addiction. I was still drinking a lot. And then at some point I traded in my alcoholism, and substance abuse for another ism, which is heralded in America, which is workaholism, right? And I did extraordinarily well as an entrepreneur. And of course I had help. Everybody has a team, but I worked really hard. And I had a couple of doctor friends of mine come and stay with Dr. Rachel and I and kind of like observe how we're doing it because we've cracked the code. We figured it out. Both of them, good friends of mine, both of them said, if that's what it takes to do it, I don't want it. Like, I'm not going to do it. Like, my life's not worth it. One of those doctors, left practice because of that experience. And he became a book writer and now does retreats with couples, trying to figure out their relationships, which I think is a lot of fun. But I mean, that was an eye opener for me. And you'd think that I would have learned immediately to set that aside and say, well, but I was like, that's them. It's not me. I can do this, until finally Rachel and I both completely, like you mentioned, burned out. Right. I mean, we broke. Our bodies, our minds, our spirits, our energy, our autoimmunity, like everything broke. And it was a hard break. And we had to leave what we were doing, which was, 7-figure businesses, and step back and say, what the heck? Like, what are we going to do? That's all that, I mean, and I want to speak for Dr. Rachel, but she has her own experience that led her to be a workaholic as well. Right. And recovering from what she needed to recover from. But nonetheless, we didn't know any better. We had, and we didn't have anybody to jump off the cliff with us. We didn't know what to do. And we scaled, basically, long story short, we scaled back, figured out some things that worked for us. And now it's interesting because we don't set alarms in the morning. We wake up and get our tactical work done. But, today I spent my morning walking the dogs and looking for morel mushrooms and getting prepared for this call. And, but I still took care of my clients, and it's just a different feel altogether to my life. And the reason I bring all that up is I think I did figure something out. But no one was there to teach me. I wish your book would have existed, is what I'm trying to say. I didn't have a guide. I still, to this day, have a lot of anger and blame and finger pointing toward my parents. And they, I don't like throwing anybody under the bus, but they were awful people that did awful things to a lot of people. And my kids and my wife say things like, and it's interesting, full circle here, maybe you need to go talk to somebody about that. And I keep saying, I don't need to talk to anybody about it. I get it. Like, I understand my ACEs from that. My adverse childhood experiences, I get it. I get the trauma. And I think what I've found now is leaning into breathing and leaning into journaling and focusing on gratitudes and prayer. And I don't know if that's what we're talking about, that bridge of like, I get it, to taking action, but full circle here and finally coming back to you. What are the things that people need to do to speed up my process that took me 2 flipping decades, no one's ever done, right? I'm absolutely a work in progress, but I would love to help people speed this up to, like, I don't know if it's weeks or months or what, or a couple years, but 20, 25, 30, I don't know, it's probably been 40 years I've been working on this in various, poor ways, but what's the method? What do people need to do?
I'm going to show you exactly what people need to do. And I'm going to preface this with, this was the exact question that I had as a physician. I'm in my addiction medicine practice. And for me, I chose that because I wanted to learn on the front lines, trauma and the body.
Yeah.
And so I'm in there and I'm using that as my school, not the textbooks, my patients. And what do you need? What do you need in order to be able to create change in your life? Because substance use is one of the hardest things to change. Hardest things to change. So how can I really help you as your physician? Is it a medication? Do I need to go and look at do I need to be involved in the research and, find the gene for addiction and, let's create the bullet medication for that gene? Like, what do I actually need to do as the physician? And what I landed on seems so simple, Dr. Jason. It seems ridiculous. It seems like if I were Dr. Jeff Bland saying this from a stage, I would get laughed off by my colleagues, because it's so simple that you think, no, it can't be that. It can't be that. But this is where people need to start in order to even start to shift their biology of trauma the fastest. If you want to go the slow route, go find someone else. I'm not going to share with you that, because that's been my experience. If you want the fastest way to shift your biology, this is what actually works. It's you being able to create a feeling of being safe right here, right now. So I'm going to show you what I started to teach my patients. Dr. Jason, where in your body right now do you feel anything that just feels tense, uncomfortable? I don't care what it is. Just give me something right now.
Sure. I'm going to answer this. I had a feeling, I'm telling you right where it is. It's in what I would say my solar plexus, right? My diaphragm area. Yeah. But here's what's really interesting. I'll share with you and then we'll go back. I had so much tension there for so long that I thought it was just the way people felt until I finally didn't feel that anymore. And what's really cool now is when I do feel it. I call it my spidey sense. Like something must be up because I actually feel it now. Right this very second, I don't feel it.
Okay.
But if I had to say where it would arise, it's in my solar plexus.
Okay. Yeah. I need something right now.
Okay. I have a little tension in my frontal sinus.
Frontal sinus. Give me a number.
3.
3. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to invite you to bring your hands up to your shoulders. Jim, I think you've got to do this too with us. And what we're going to do is we are going to imagine that there's this huge rock in front of us, huge boulder. Can you feel it? Like you can't even reach the top of it. Can you feel it? You're not like try to reach to the top of it. Like it's so big, like it's so massive. You can't even get your hands around it. But we are going to push this thing away. But it's so heavy, you're going to have to push really slow. Push really slow. So bringing your hands back to your shoulders, brace your hips or your legs or your feet in some way to help you push. And now you can start pushing slowly. I want you to go as slow as you can, not as fast as you can, as slow as you can. I want your muscles to even start to shake. I want you to start to feel like, ooh, this is hard. This is tough. I feel in my fingers like pushing into this boulder, into this rock. And you're just going to keep going as slow as you can until your arms are fully extended. And like, I'm only halfway there. So again, like the idea, this exercise works the best when you can go as slow as possible.
Mm-hmm.
When you reach full extension, then just kind of pause there until you feel the sense of like, okay, I'm done. And then you can drop your arms. And then we just kind of give it a second. And then we gather information from our body. It takes a second for that information to travel up our vagus nerve. The part of the vagus nerve that's underneath the diaphragm is unmyelinated. And so it just, information travels slower. But yet that's exactly where that felt sense of either safety or danger comes from, is from our gut. And so we just always want to give it a minute and then just notice like what shifted in my body. I noticed that my shoulders dropped. I noticed that my chest feels a little more open. I noticed that my abdomen, that solar plexus that you were talking about, just feels like some of the muscles just kind of softened a bit. What are you noticing?
Well, it's interesting. As James knows, I've been blaming it on the weather, but actually I think I might have got a little touch of something of like a virus or something. But anyway, I've been having these migraines. And so this like frontal sinus thing has been bothering me. Right. And I noticed that when I was doing the exercise, actively in the exercise, I completely didn't like, I didn't feel that at all. Like it was just not, I wasn't conscious of it, but I can tell in retrospect, it wasn't there. And even when you said, okay, now drop your arms and everything and, you know, let it relax, I realized that my shoulders were down. You know, I was actually sitting a little bit more erect, which is probably nice, for my posture. And I still didn't notice that. And that thing, I don't know if I can grade it, you know, cause now I'm talking about it and I'm thinking about it. And so now it's back in my awareness, but it was completely gone for a little bit. And it's probably back a little bit, but I don't know, maybe less, but yeah, my shoulders are down. I'm sitting upright. I felt when I was pushing, cause I was, you know, trying to imagine pushing like this big boulder and like flexing my muscles while I was doing it. And then when I relaxed it, I felt, a relaxation through my body. I mean, the whole experience was interesting. I've never experienced that before. That was great.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that, I mean, I want to call it weird, right? Let's just call it weird. Yeah. I'm pushing away an imaginary rock and it's making my sinus feel better.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. James, what did you notice in your body?
Not the same as Jason. I just felt like I took myself away from my ideas.
Yeah, space.
And I have an initiative here to be a host on a podcast and ask questions and nurture the conversation and get more interesting things to be talked about. And it pulled me away from that and it calmed me down. So I think
what it did for me is took me out of my state of what I'm focused on.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm not stressed here. I have a lot of cool stuff I want to get to. But it reestablished my position with the podcast.
Yeah.
It paused me to go with different energy
Mhm.
than what I had. So it was like a reset for me.
That's what it does for me too. Honestly, it's like a reset for me. So I love that was part of your experience. So,
But it's not a technique that I would use personally, but I learned by hosting a show,
Yeah.
and everybody teaches me something that I can walk away with and, have a new skill in my toolkit. So I think it's really cool that if something is like really like, I'm not immune to having an ache or pain here and there. So if I have that, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to push this damn boulder and see if I can reset my consciousness around what I'm experiencing and see if I can get relief like Dr. Jason did, to where it's not an issue.
yeah. So when I'm working with patients or people coming in to get some help, so many of them have never truly felt safe in their body. So they don't even know what that means for me to say, oh, I want you to create the feeling of safety. Like they look at me like I'm from Mars. Like how would I know what that even feels like, let alone how to do that? And so being able to create these very simple exercises, I've got 21 of them in my back pocket, that I can teach my patients so that in the moment, wherever they are, driving, in the grocery store, at home, wherever they are, they have these tools with them. They don't need to wait for their next therapist appointment. They don't need to do a 5-minute meditation. They've got it with them, and they now have learned how to create their own inner safety wherever they are, wherever they go. That is what I saw shifting the substance use. Because that was the reason for the substance use. The reason for the substance use is I feel out of control. I feel like this is overwhelming. I don't want to feel this. I'd rather feel this. And this is so accessible and it's so effective. Why should I not use this? And so I had to create something that it was so accessible and so effective that it truly was an alternative to, I'm not saying don't take that pill or drink that alcohol. I'm just saying, let's do this first, and then you can go have that. And in that process, they realized that they didn't crave the substance anymore because they had found the safety that they had been looking for, that feeling over in this substance.
You're totally right. And I think kind of coming back to what we were talking about earlier, that we've been I don't want to say socially trained. That's not what I mean, but to avoid stress, you know, and one of the ways that I learned how to avoid stress was to, self-medicate and drink and smoke a lot of weed and, all of that kind of stuff. Right. Because I didn't want to face my stress. And if I could dissociate and numb it, I don't know if numbing's the right word, but you know what I mean? If I could do that, I didn't have to think about it, and then if I wasn't drunk or stoned or whatever it was, I could thrust myself into work and use that as my drug, so to speak. And if it wasn't that, then I could eat a lot and get my endorphins from food that I was eating. And I got up to 285 pounds at one point. I mean, I've struggled with all the addictions, and I'm teasing. I'm not trying to make light of that, but I really have. I have a question for you, and let me give you some context. I have a very close friend of mine that gave me a challenge. And it's a male friend. And he said, have you ever felt, have you ever felt that you were in a dangerous situation around a woman? And I didn't, I was like, no, and I really haven't felt that way. I didn't feel threatened in the presence of a woman. And he said, I promise you that if you ask every female friend of yours, everybody, your kids, your wife, everybody, have you ever felt threatened in the presence of a man? They're all going to say yes, in some way. And so far in my life, because I've asked probably hundreds of female friends and colleagues and whatnot, my family, I've gotten a resounding like, oh, absolutely. There was this one time, there was this thing, or, whatever. And it's interesting. And he said, now you have to understand that women are carrying around that feeling all of the time. It's different than for men. We have our own problems with safety, but women have this unique thing, in his experience, and then talking to me about it, and then me asking people, it seems somewhat correct that women in safety, like it's a different approach than men in safety. And I'm wondering, in your experience, do women have a harder time finding that safe space, like putting, like not being hyper vigilant, not being as triggered? I don't know if I'm asking the question the right way, but there seems to be something different with men and women. I think that's what I'm trying to get to. Have you experienced that? Not that. Let me ask the question. What I meant is, have you experienced that men and women experience the idea of safety differently? Is what I'm trying to ask.
Yes, I think that men and women experience the sense of danger in different ways and the sense of safety in different ways. And yet at the end of the day, it's not different at all.
Mm.
At the end of the day, how the human body, female or male, the human body is designed to have a gut feeling about something. And that's the feeling that we're talking about. It's accomplished perhaps in different ways. And I think that there are different pressures on men that, especially around just showing emotion. You're not allowed to show emotion. You're not allowed to tear up or cry. And yet for women, like, that's not the message that we get, but we get other messages around it's not safe to be this or do this in relationship with another person. So again, the messages can be different, the associations can be different, but the feeling isn't different. The feeling is still the feeling of a human body of, I am safe, I am perfectly safe in the arms of another. Meaning I don't have to brace, I don't have to protect myself, I can let them see all of me. And it's perfectly safe to do that. I feel held and safe in the arms of another.
I love that. And I would take that like back to another part of our conversation. And I think that you said you had 21 activities in your back pocket that you can pull out for your patients at any time and teach them to do it, that they can do anywhere. It sounds like those activities would work for both men and women then.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's the human body. Like these are neuroscience activities, right? It's not just orienting, it's how you are orienting that we can leverage some of those neuroscience principles. Are the neuroscience principles different for men than for women? No, like it's the human body, it's the human eye, it's how the eye is connected to the brain and the amygdala and all the limbic system region. And so there's so much that is the same, actually more than what is different.
It's fascinating. It feeds really well too. I did a postdoc in, it's a big word, psychoneuroimmunoendocrinology. We just shoved it all together. But I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, we're talking about, the body and the brain actually are one unit, and it affects our immune system, our nervous system, all of our systems, digestive system and cardiovascular system. The list goes on and on and on. And I love the idea of teaching people how to, play this card when you need it. You can do it at the grocery store. You can do it in your car. You can, do it when you're in the shower. You can, wherever it happens to be. I love that. James, I know you're chomping at the bit. I'll pass it over to you.
Well, I think there's a lot of fundamentals that you guys are talking about when it comes to somebody breaking a cycle. And when somebody's in a cycle, they don't know it, they're unaware, but it's running the game and it's running the show for everyone. And it has a downstream effect because now it has that cycle's running the household. Now that cycle is running the relationship. And I never went to college to become a doctor. I went to college for marketing and journalism because I didn't want to be a doctor. But I like talking to doctors because you take your discipline very seriously. But have you ever gone to the kitchen before, either of you, and grabbed a sponge And you're like, I'm not going to do my dishes with that. I need to throw that one out. I need a new one. And I think that that's how people are as life. Over time, they can't smell themselves as the funky sponge, but somebody with your skill set can say, you, we need to like get you a fresh one because I'm not going to let you do your dishes with that anymore. And you got to like retool them and reorient them with a new idea. And if they want to do dishes with their funky sponge, they can, but their dishes aren't going to be fun, and no one else is going to want to eat off of that. So I think it's a really great analogy for how people's personalities are and attitudes are, is sometimes we just need to like get a fresh, clean sponge. And that's sometimes our life. But playing it safe with people doesn't necessarily always win. And that's how I come into this. I feel like kind of a lightning rod right now because I'm listening to you guys go back and forth. Jason's talking to you about his past trauma. He's talking to you about how he like sorted himself out, what he did to get through those moments, and how he's still working on things, and how you can take somebody and basically create a new cycle of action for them to implement for themselves to where they can move on to a better clarity of life moving forward without the pills, potions, and lotions. And I think one thing that you did say that I have to disagree on is you said you can go back and do your pills or do your drink. And I would say I'm an all or nothing guy. Like I'd be like, no, this is the way that you get clarity and you get resolution, is you don't do that anymore. And anytime you think about that, you do this type of exercise to where that doesn't become your sedation station, and you don't go back to that life cycle. You can go on to this next thing and don't do that anymore. Because I'm 7 years sober, and if somebody said, "Hey, you're having a bad day, just go back and have that drink," I'd be like, "F you."
Mm.
Like who you do, you know, I think that everybody's so individual that if we give them an option to play small, they will. And I speak on stage all around the world. And one of the things I ask people at the end of my talk is, if you were the last chiropractor on planet Earth, would the profession survive? Like, own it. And then I say, in 100 years, will they remember you? Because that gives them the onus of saying, damn it, I got to step up and be bigger. And if I don't be bigger, then the world's going to forget about me. And I really believe that we have to take people full circle and really put them at that edge that you were talking about earlier, and let them know that they're built for something greater than what they came to talk to you about or what they're looking for resolutions of. And I just had to like be that voice for today's show and say, look, everybody's dealing with something. Everybody. It's the kid's behavior. It's the spouse that's aloof. It's the job that sucks. Like there's something going on in everybody's cycle. But if we don't make people think big about themselves, they will always be small about themselves, and they'll go back and sedate and drift and do the things that don't allow them to find that safety. But you have to sometimes say, look, the biggest challenge you're ever going to do is go look in that mirror and have to own that person. And there's nothing that I can tell you except for how to basically get through this and some techniques to use to get through this. But I think it's the responsibility of us to say, hey, this is not okay with what you're doing, and these are the solutions that we can follow to get better resolution. And I do have one thing that I want to like get to though. I felt like I was like inside of me to really like just like release that. But you guys have both mentioned for the past hour about this idea of autoimmunity. You said that you had some, Jason talked about some of his, and I'm just curious, why is autoimmunity so damn prevalent for both of you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think a very needed question in today's world. And I do want to go back because what you caught me saying is something that is only applicable at the very first phase of the healing journey,
Cool.
It's only at the very first step. It doesn't apply once you're past that first step. And I didn't explain that. And so you're thinking, wait, you're always going to give allowance for someone to like relapse into their substance? Absolutely not. However, here's what has to happen at that very first step. The very first step is working with what I call the parts of me. I'm sure you're familiar with internal family systems and this idea that there's all these different parts of us. There's all these different parts of us. And so just being able to simplify it right now, back to this analogy and say, there is a part of me that says, I don't want to feel this, so I'm going to go drink some alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And if that part of me, if that part of me had relied on that as survival mechanism for 20, 30 years of my life, and all of a sudden I, as my current adult self, show up to that part and I'm like, all right, we're changing things up. You're never allowed to have a drink again. Without the context of, because I have another solution for you, because this other thing is going to work and it's going to work out better for us. Without that context, this part freaks out. Panic attack. Not because it's panicking over never having alcohol. It's panicking over, I don't know how to keep you alive then. I don't know how to help you when the stress really hits. And that's my job. My job is to help you numb, avoid, and distract in order to keep you alive. And so how do I work with that part of me to become a partner with it? Just like I'm going to become a partner with my body, I'm going to come alongside this part and say, you know what? I've learned something new. I think it's really cool. I think it's going to actually work out really well for us. But it is going to require a change in what we normally do. And I'm going to ask for your buy-in so that you will allow us to try this new thing. And so in that context is the only time that I would say that language of, hey, we're going to try this first. And what I'm going to tell this part of me is that this is not black or white. This is not do or die. This is we're working to change this. And I'm still going to let you know that, hey, if all else fails, I'm not going to pull this card on you that says, so sorry, but you can never do the only thing that you've learned to do to keep. But once we've made that shift, do I still be able to be like, oh, but afterwards you can go have a drink? No, because we've made that change. And now I've been able to have that part, have the buy-in because I've made it safe, that it doesn't need that other thing anymore because I have shown it that this way is just as effective and it's actually working out better for us. And so that initial thing is just for the initial change to make that first change safe enough.
Well, you're much better at this than I am, but I have feelings that I catch that when I'm like doing the work that I do, I'm like, hey, we need some clarity to this. So thank you for bringing that to the show today.
Yeah.
And I do want you guys to both focus on that question though, like why is autoimmunity so prevalent? Like why are we like in this stinky sponge world where everybody has like something?
Yeah, Dr. Jason, I'll let you take it first.
I'll try. Yeah, thank you. I think it's I've been formulating my answer, so it's going to be brilliant. I think.
Well, then let me go first.
Yeah, no, yeah, you can if you like, but I'll just say quickly that when I look at the immune system, I see a lot of folks that have, and it took me a number of years in my practice to evolve to this, right, to understand this. But I see a lot of coinciding hypervigilant nervous systems with, I'm going to say, hypervigilant immune systems. I think they go hand in hand. And I think, coming back to Dr. Bland, saying stress is the ultimate equalizer. I started seeing patterns with my clients. I mean, we live in a toxic world, first of all. And so, toxicities can certainly trigger the immune system. So, I mean, there's that piece of it. We're undernourished. And I mean, if we look at immune system regulators, whether it be something like as simple as iodine or vitamin D or just some, nutrients, we live in a world where people are not getting just basic nutrition. We're very calorie fed, but we're nutrient poor. We look, when I look at people's hormones as an example, I see, again, hormones that would help regulate the immune system, like progesterone, testosterone, I mean, declining over the 26 years that I've been in practice. And I see hormones that could be triggering or excitatory to the nervous system and immune system, like estrogens, estradiol, climbing, both in men and women. I know we think of that as a feminizing hormone, but I mean, I see it in men and women. I see the food that we're eating being sprayed with who knows what. Glyphosate comes to mind. But I'm sure there's a bunch of crap in our soil and in our food. Besides the fact that it's lower in nutrient density than it was, back when we started measuring this in the 1930s. There's so many. We have gut permeability, so things that should be staying in our gut. We find people. I think that's called not intestinal hyperpermeability. Oh, leaky gut. There we go. I had to think about it. We see more and more people, at least I do, more and more people with gut permeability issues, leaky gut syndrome, I guess, if you're going to call it that, where stuff that should be staying in the gut and eliminated is not getting eliminated. It's circulating back into the bloodstream. And then our immune system is like, danger, danger. And again, all of this is triggering to, and there's more. I'll let Dr. Aimie speak on it too, but couple of that, like I said, that we're overworked, underpaid, overtaxed, underslept. I mean, we're in stress. I mean, and our spouses and the people that we want to have a soft place to land with, they're stressed too. They're under the same duress that we're under. And there is no safe place. I mean, it's just every day, it's the same thing over and over and over again. And I think it triggers autoimmunity. I think the body's like, I'm confused now. There's too much going on. I'm going to make autoimmune antibodies and start destroying the system that I'm living in, because we start destroying the self. And I think that's what's going on. That's why I think it's on the rise. Dr. Aimie, I'd love to hear your thought on that.
The way that I see autoimmunity, it is the trifecta of three things that have to happen. And that trifecta is toxins, like you've talked about, leaky gut, like you've talked about, and trauma being the other. Now, I'm going to use a different word here than trauma because, again, what are we talking about when we say trauma? I'm actually specifically looking for what a person is terrified of. And that's the question that I'm asking my patients.
Wow. Okay.
What in your life is going on right now that you are terrified of? Not just scared, not just a little anxious. You're terrified of this. What is that? And they've all been able to name something. All been able to name something. So the way that I understand the nervous system and the immune system is that when we've experienced these states of overwhelm without that complete resolution, as you said, Dr. Jason, our nervous system then stays in this hypervigilant state. I talk about it being the body trauma loop, the hypervigilant state. But the nervous system and the immune system are so connected, you cannot separate them. Right? You cannot separate them. And so now you have an immune system that is a perfect window into a person's stress and overwhelm. And that had to have started early in their life for it to have built over the years underneath the surface to then develop an autoimmunity later on. And what I see as a common trigger is some form of change. Whether that be a loss, whether that be perimenopause and there being a change in the hormones, there's some kind of change that happens that the system, the nervous system is just like, nope, I can't deal with that. I've been able to deal with so much and that I cannot deal with that. And that seems to then be that final trigger for autoimmunity, as long as you also have the other two in place, toxins and leaky gut. And then you have the autoimmunity. And given our world today, right? Like, who does not have toxins? Who does not have leaky gut? So this is why I think it's becoming so much more prevalent. So much more prevalent.
Very great responses from both of you. And I'll just give my take on it, if that's okay.
Please.
I just think we try to over medicate people, and people are really sick. And the thing that they're giving to people isn't working. And we need to reestablish a new baseline for what it means to support somebody when they come in. And the reason I got us to this point, and this is all very well orchestrated on my end, because like Dr. Jason said, I've hosted a show for almost a decade. I wanted to get us to the point where you've created a full script, curated supplement protocol to support people. And if we really want to get people to get better faster, then we have to create a new system for them to get better faster with. Because what we've discovered throughout today's conversation is nothing we've done up to this point is getting people better faster. It's actually causing more problems. And from my original opening question for you is the Miguel story. If we just took people from where they were and we knew the right pathway to take them on, we wouldn't have to fix these tertiary things like addiction and avoidance and bad behavior and poor attitudes and all the things. We could actually give the right pathway from the beginning, which, you know, I'm famously noted for saying there's no money in healthy people. But wouldn't it be cool if we like kind of didn't need money to make people better? If we could just tell them something that they could do and their life would improve dramatically and they wouldn't be stuck in 30 or 40 years of turmoil and trauma and trigger. Like, how about that? So I do want you to talk about this supplement protocol for mitochondrial repair, because I think when I talk about this topic of, it's a big idea. It's a really big idea when it comes to autoimmunity, because there's different levels of them and there's different things that get attacked. Like I said in the opener, the issues are in the tissues. So if you can figure out how to make somebody healthy on a cellular level, now we're not getting triggered with autoimmunity. And the person doesn't have to go through years of therapy and expensive lab work and testing and all these different things that people think are the answer. So tell us about this. Tell us about this Get Better Faster protocol you have.
You know, the concept here is that trauma is an energy problem. And I say that because our bodies are naturally designed to be able to recover from even traumatic experiences and to not have this kind of lasting impact that we see today in becoming disease. So if it's not doing that on its own, then something's blocking it. And it's usually coming down to an energy problem. Recovery takes energy. Healing takes energy.
Amen.
Yeah.
And if my mitochondria, which are the organelles that make energy, are so burdened down, they have toxins, they're inefficient, they don't have the nutrients that they need to make the energy, then I have just created my ceiling for what is possible. And I'm going to keep bumping up into that ceiling every time I get to that level. Be like, oh, I always get this far, and then I just can't go the next step. I can't follow through. I can't just break this pattern. And it's because it really comes down to my body can't make the energy to make that change happen.
I love that.
So mitochondria are at the center of this conversation for trauma recovery. I would say if you can only do two, go talk to a therapist, take some mitochondrial supplements. It would be a close call for like what actually is going to help in the long term, because they're both going to hold you back. But that's the piece that's been missing, right? Like we've focused so much on the go talk to a therapist, even though now we know that it's not just that, it's so much more. But don't neglect your biology, because your biology is going to create the ceiling effect for what you can accomplish in that therapy session.
Absolutely.
And then how much you can integrate into your life after that therapy session. That comes down to your mitochondria.
I think it's really interesting that you bring that up, James and Dr. Aimie. Thank you. I just spoke at the Great Prairies Conference over the weekend about thyroid, and my whole talk about thyroid, I think if you had to sum it up, was it's not the thyroid. It's everything around the thyroid, right?
Exactly.
And I led my doctors that were in the room. I think there were a couple hundred. I led them to basically how the thyroid is necessary to make that mitochondria work and to help to stimulate the mitochondria, to trigger the mitochondria, to make that ATP, the energy that we're creating. And without even something basic like that thyroid working, we're not going to see that energy being produced. But then if you step back from that, it's, well, why isn't the thyroid working? Right. And stress, trauma, stress, there's a lot of words we can use here, is, again, I keep saying it's the great equalizer. Right. And again, the longer I said this earlier, the longer I do the work on this planet that I'm doing, the more I keep coming back to nervous system regulation, get out of the hypervigilant state, give yourself time to rest and restore. And I think the biggest struggle I have right now with my patients is, hey, take a minute, breathe. You don't need to have another hard day. Take a day, take a minute. Everyone else does. You deserve one too. And it's very difficult. But I really appreciate that about the mitochondria, because if we don't make energy, our cells don't work. If whether it's a big toe cell or a brain cell, it doesn't matter. The cell's not working without the mitochondria pumping out energy. So I really, really appreciate that you guys brought that up. Thank you.
Yeah, so let me tie in the neuroplasticity aspect here, because neuroplasticity is what you need to harness in order to change your neural pathways and do something different, whatever that different is. And so when we're talking about the trauma healing journey, we are also still very much talking about neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity can only work when you have the energy for the neuroplasticity. And so again, we're coming up to like, this is why then we bump into that ceiling every single time we get to that point, because we're not able to even make the changes that we're trying to make last. They're temporary and they don't last. And that's because we just still don't even have the energy for the neuroplasticity that is the essential component for the trauma healing.
You're totally right. And it's interesting, way back in my notes, I had to scroll up. I have pages of notes, by the way. I appreciate it. It's when we were talking about retelling the story and re-experiencing the trauma, when you're talking to a therapist, talking to a girlfriend on the phone, or whatever it happens to be. I wrote down, it's like anti-neuroplasticity. It's like digging a deeper rut, like just retelling it over and over. And I love the idea of, I also have down here, I'm going to push that boulder daily now, right? I love this idea of like actually taking action rather than just reliving it and digging that rut and telling myself over and over again, this is me. This is my experience. This is who I am. I love the idea of neuroplasticity, and I love the idea of bringing neuroscience in to psychology, I guess, or trauma work. I think it's brilliant. And I think it's the bridge that needs to be built. Question I have, I know we're running out of time. The research lines up. This is probably my last question because we're running out of time. The research is lining up with what you're teaching. Absolutely. It's there. It's for our listeners. If you go to PubMed, like everything that we've talked about today is so researched and talked about. Unfortunately, it's not being taught in provider training, regardless of what type of provider that you are. So my question is, how long do you think it's going to take to get this into the schools and become the norm with intervention? Because I find that most of the training in this area comes from people like you, speaking, teaching, writing, and not in structured training like in the conventional schools. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Here's my thoughts. How long did it take Dr. Jeff Bland's statement to actually land in the published research?
Yeah, over 2 decades. You're right, 3 decades probably.
Decades.
Yeah.
How long did it take for Dr. Vincent Folletti's adverse childhood experience study to ever reach into the actual practice in a conventional medical model? Over 2 decades.
Yeah.
Now, here's my strategy though. I think that in the world that we live in today, with the technology, with the social media, with the AI, that we actually have the potential to make this one faster. And so what I have chosen to do is go directly to the people.
Yes.
I am not as focused on trying to teach my colleagues as I am let me just go directly to the people. Let me give them this information so that they can start to become experts in their own nervous system, in their own body. And then they're going to be the ones who are going to go to their providers and be talking about this. And so earlier on, it was mentioned, kind of how my work was about helping people change their patterns. Yes, and I see that my work in this world is just as much to help people recognize their patterns and then be able to change them. So that's been my focus with what I'm now calling like the precision nervous system regulation, is how do I help you come in and see, oh, these things that I do, they're patterns by which I can recognize I still have some unresolved trauma. Do I want to work on this? Do I want to change this? Or am I happy with living like this the rest of my life? Because if I want to change them, now at least I can recognize them. And then I give them all of this support, right? Like, well, let's talk about your mitochondria. Let's actually do an assessment of your mitochondria. Let's do an assessment of your autoimmune risk. Let's do an assessment of your dysregulation of your responses. Let's do this whole comprehensive precision nervous system assessment so that we can be really clear on what patterns you have, how strong they are, and then we can be even more precise about, then this is where we can start to bring in that sense of safety to do something different, while we bring in the support for your body so that it has the energy to do something different.
I love that. I will say for myself, then I'll pass it over to James. The way that I've recognized more of my patterns, and I think it's accelerated me, is by watching my children grow up and watching and observing their patterns. And
Parenting,
it's been and I'm like, that bothers me about you. And I'm like, well, maybe I
need something in me.
and I'm like, where'd they learn that, Bradley? And I mean, it's it's me. And it really has accelerated my understanding of myself and probably moving forward a little bit. So thank you to Adeline and Violet for teaching me, teach your parents well, Crosby, Stills, and Nash. But James, I'll pass it right over to you, sir.
Well, today's segment featuring you, Dr. Aimie, as a subject matter expert has taught me a great deal. And from somebody that it's my way or the highway and school of hard knocks and flip over the handlebars and jump into the deep end, like I've learned some things about technique that I didn't necessarily deploy or think that was fitting for me. But listening to the way you describe it, I feel like there's a lot of people that will walk away with something more than they had before. So I just want to acknowledge you for that.
Absolutely.
And I think based on the questions that I had set up, and thank you for being so open to not being offended by what I shared or how I feel about the world around me or the world that you work in or these deeper emotional pulls. But people are out there and they're like, damn it, why has everybody got an autoimmune condition? And I know I'm not the only one that thinks that, but I'm sure that there's people out there that's their big, skeleton in the closet that they don't want to talk to anybody about. So I think it's really reassuring that we can have an open conversation about things on our show that are very taboo, even though that they're mainstream. Like there's a lot of taboo that we touched on today that's very mainstream, and people don't know how to have conversations around it. So I'm thankful that we had a chance to actually have conversations around the new age taboo. And I think that there's a lot of people that are going to learn from this and find solutions for themselves and find access points where they can now say, okay, this isn't my death sentence. I don't have to go to the grave with this. There is a way for me to actually come to admittance, and I don't have to be an alcoholic for the rest of my life. And I don't have to be strapped to a prescription bottle for the rest of my life. I think that there's some good resolve that we've had today in this short hour and a half punch that we've had to talk about topics and your life's work. But I just want to tell you that it's been absolutely mind blowing for me, and I'm sure Dr. Jason also. I'm sure for our listeners, and to our listeners, if this hit you in the gut today, if you recognize yourself in what Dr. Aimie described as the chronic fatigue, the anxiety, the autoimmunity, the behavioral growth stunt, whatever it might be, like the thing that's the open loop for you and your trauma, that nobody can help figure out, the brain fog, the shutdown, your character flaw that you don't want to share with anybody. This is your biology telling you the truth. And I think that that's a big wake up call for not only me, but a lot of people. And the answer, like I keep on banging the drum on, it's not going to come from another prescription bottle. It's not another round of talk therapy. It's actually doing the damn work. And it's learning the language that your body has speaking to you all along. I do want to encourage everybody to go over to getbetterfasterpodcast.com and grab a copy of Dr. Amy's national bestseller, The Biology of Trauma. It's everywhere that books are available for sale. And go check out her 21-day journey that we didn't even get a chance to talk about, but she did tell you that she has 21 techniques for you that you can use to get yourself through the next phase of life. She also has an attachment trauma roadmap that you can check out. And all the somatic tools that are already helping thousands of people rewire their nervous systems, because she did say the immune system is not separate from the immune system and they're interconnected. So when you fix one, you might be able to fix the other in a roundabout way. And my message to everybody that always watches knows that I'm pretty hardcore, that I'll tell you, nobody's coming to save you, but solutions like Dr. Amy's can prove you can save yourself. Like I advocate for people all the time, Dr. Amy, but I tell them that they have to actually do the damn work. And that's sometimes uncomfortable at the outset of today's show, but really you have to be an active participant if you want the results that you desire and you don't want to live in the trauma and on this open loop cycle of sickness and disease and really a poor quality of life where you blame other people like we opened up with, or blame yourself where you don't have a solution to get out of it. So all of you are Get Better Faster Nation. Thank you for listening, your continued support. I know you have your phone in front of you right now. Pick it up, hit copy this episode, and share it to somebody that needs to hear this message. Share it to your friend that's tried everything and nothing worked. Send it to a family member that feels stuck. This is a conversation that could change your life, not just because I think so, but because I know that there's people out there, like we talked about, they're dealing with this new age taboo, that they're just like stuck. And they're like, damn it, this other doctor with Western techniques doesn't know how to help me. I need another path. So I want to thank you again for sharing new solutions for people. And to everybody out there, don't forget to subscribe and never miss an episode so you get the behind the scenes action we got coming your way. And like Dr. Jason was mentioned, he helps people with their thyroid. And if you are dealing with something like this, go over to getbetterfasterpodcast.com and go check out thyroidauthority.com and get the link, and we'll get you connected to Dr. Jason and his amazing team. In closing, we've got more incredible guests lined up who are going to blow your mind with real solutions for reclaiming your health, your happiness, and your life. Until next time, just like I say, keep questioning everything and keep getting better faster. Dr. Aimie, Dr. Jason, amazing show today. Thank you both so much.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Dr. Aimie. I'm gonna push that boulder.